What's up, YouTube? I'm Red from Rants. As always, guys, if y'all enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. We're on the road to 1,000, and we hope you guys can help us get there. Alright, so, it's been, 3 weeks since American Gods was canceled off of Stars. Many of us who are fans of the show still really shocked. I did a video on here, and I know I've talked about it in a few of my other videos, where after this season finale of season 3, I said, you know what? This could be it. And I said that strictly by looking at the ratings of season 3. They were hemorrhaging viewers. The show was hemorrhaging viewers. I know that's not something that a lot of American Gods fans want to hear, because let's face it, it's not one that I want to hear either. It had its die-hard fans, but without some of the characters that really were the heart and soul of the series, it completely failed. Not having Orlando Jones as Mr. Nancy. I mean, what were you thinking, Stars, American Gods? What were y'all thinking? Not bringing him back. I mean, his perspective and dialogue was just what was worth the view of an episode. Just knowing that he was going to be in an episode, even if it was for 10 seconds. You knew he was going to say something brilliant, and you knew that the whole episode could be completely and totally sucky, and it still wouldn't matter because it would have been worth it just with a few seconds or minutes of his dialogue. I mean, he was a brilliant character. I mean, I cannot state that enough at how amazing of a character he was. And I've seen it here on Rants or Us. When we do a video over American Gods, the very first thing that people bring up was, you know what? I love this show until they got rid of Orlando Jones. And you know what? I loved Orlando Jones too. I did. I loved Pablo Schreiber as Mad Sweeney. Once they were gone in this show, it really was, there was not much that this show could do. I mean, and I will go so far as saying, I know a lot of fans would disagree with me on this, but I actually believe that not having Mad Sweeney on this show was a bigger deal to it in season 3 than what not having Mr. Nancy was. And just hear me out on this one. Do I believe it was a bigger loss overall? Like, let's say if this show went 5 seasons, not having Mr. Nancy on there for the final 2 seasons, or final 3 seasons, I guess you could say, would be felt more than not having Mad Sweeney. But if we're talking about from a season 3 perspective, not having Mad Sweeney on that show was devastating. And I'll tell you why. Because he was antagonistic to Mr. Wednesday. When Shadow Moon wasn't there to have some back and forth dialogue with Wednesday, there was always Sweeney there to do it. Mad Sweeney was an antagonist, in not that he was a villain, but that he was somebody that antagonized Wednesday. He was one of the few that just openly challenged Wednesday in more ways than not. Like, he was, he didn't take nothing from anybody. And when you took him out of the show, that whole bond that him and even Laura had, just made her just a complete and totally useless character. Useless. So I mean, you have Shadow Moon eating pastries in Wisconsin, away from the main storyline. You have Ian McShane's Mr. Wednesday, um, you know, really kind of not having anyone that is of the same level as what he was from a character standpoint, except for the few episodes where there was Demeter. But other than that, no one could live up to the standards of what Shadow Moon and Mad Sweeney brought to him when it come from a dialogue standpoint, from a pushing him standpoint. And it made his character less entertaining to watch. And as far as Laura is concerned, oh my goodness. That whole cynical back and forth that she would do with Mad Sweeney? Once that was gone, she was like the worst character on the show. Like, there was nothing about Laura in season 3 that I enjoyed. Period. She was that bad. So when people say, when you have detractors saying season 3 sucked, sadly they're true. Season 3 did suck, simply because of that. Season 3 sucked because like I said, in season 3, when it come to even Mad Sweeney, his presence or non-presence was felt because we had to listen to all that cynical BS from Laura. We had Mr. Wednesday not having anybody to challenge him in any form or fashion, which Sweeney had done in the past, and that hurt this show this season. Now, as far as Orlando Jones is concerned, I don't know what like I said a million times, I'll say it a million times over. What were you thinking, stars, American Gods showrunners, by taking Orlando Jones out of that? Out of the story. I mean, is madness. To do something like that. He was too brilliant of a character. He was too much of a fan favorite. His dialogue was just beautiful. I mean, that's the only word to describe it. His perspective was like nothing any of the other characters had. None of them. His dialogue, when it come to certain issues of the day and of the past in American history, was second to none. They try to make Bilquist into the next Mr. Nancy when it come to things. In as much as I enjoyed Bilquist's character, she did not have the abilities of an Orlando Jones. Just didn't have the ability to connect with viewers. So yeah, I mean, not having those two on the show was devastating to this show. And then like I said, I've said it a million times on this channel, and I almost get sick and tired of having to say it. American Gods was better when they were paired up. Characters were paired up into groups, and they were on a road trip somewhere. American Gods was one of the best road trip shows out there ever created, because when they're on the road and they're having the dialogue that's going back and forth, and the story is between those two characters, that was when American Gods was at its best. When you spread these characters out in all these different directions, Laura in Purgatory, Shadow Moon in Wisconsin, Mr. Wednesday in God knows where. I mean, in all these different areas, you don't have that back and forth. And this show didn't have wasn't built for that. This show wasn't built to be action packed. It just wasn't. That's not what made American Gods great. No one will ever say that the action in American Gods was superb. It wasn't. It wasn't even a big deal to a lot of fans. I mean, you could have had a whole show or a whole episode or even a whole season of American Gods without one single action scene happening, and no one would have cared, because that's not what American Gods fans were actually what they actually enjoyed about the characters. They enjoyed the dialogue. They enjoyed the back and forth between these two characters. They enjoyed the intrigue that these characters brought. And sadly, all of that was just missing. It just was missing season 3. And unfortunately, it paid for it. It really did. I mean, I didn't want to admit this. Because even when the last episode of season 3 happened, I was thinking to myself on that, you know what? Those first few episodes of American Gods season 3 were pretty cool. They could have maybe had a 4-episode season, and it would have been great. I kind of felt like all the other episodes that were added on after that were just basically fillers. But at the end of the day, when I watched it the first time, I thought the 4 episodes that were good made up for the ones that were bad after that, the second part of that season. But now that I go back and I rewatched season 3, no, it wasn't. I mean, and I get where all the detractors are talking about how this show failed in so many ways. This season, I won't say the show failed, but this season failed. Where the show failed was to understand the importance of the vital characters that made this show amazing. That's where this show failed. That's where showrunners failed. I won't say the show in general failed, but showrunners of this show failed. They just failed because they thought they could continue a story without some of the main protagonists, main important protagonists of this show, and it wasn't going to happen. Just wasn't. You couldn't take 2 of the most interesting characters and not even put them in the show. Couldn't. You can't even say the same thing about Ibis. I mean, you didn't have him in this season either. So, I mean, why even have a show if half your cast is gone? You know what? I still have hope for American Gods. I know it's canceled. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, there's no hope for it now. If another streaming channel or service will pick it up, and maybe, I won't say recast, but bring in new blood. New blood to this series. I think this show I think it could get right back on track. Of course, that all depends upon whether or not, somebody picks it up or not. And, that's still iffy. Still iffy. But man, this show, season 3, I mean, like I said, I hated to admit it, and maybe I didn't see it quite as well the first go around, but man, that second go around in season 3, I mean, it was just as clear as day that it didn't even feel like American Gods in season 3. Just didn't. I mean, not having Mr. Nancy and Mad Sweeney was a killer for this show. It was a killer because it made every one of these other shows or other characters less interesting. Not having the genie with or the Jinn with Salim was also a big problem too. Having him where he's sad and depressed until the very end probably wasn't a good idea. I thought he was a great character. I actually enjoyed, when he was with Laura a little bit, even though I kind of felt like she kind of brought him down a little bit. Um, you just you couldn't spread all these characters in all these different directions and expect this show to succeed like it did in the first two seasons. You just couldn't. Just couldn't. And that's a shame. So, my final verdict on it is all the detractors are probably right. They're probably right. Season 3 did not live up to expectations. This show is hemorrhaging viewers, and I see why now. I really do. I see why. Even though that doesn't change my overall opinion. My overall opinion stays the exact same as what it's always been. I still believe this show has hope, and this show is still brilliant. But my faith in it as it is in season 3 is fading, and is fading quickly, and it's making me, even if there was a season 4, less excited if the cast stays the exact same as what it does now. I mean, just wouldn't be that excited about it, to be honest with you. I mean, and I hate to say that because I love this show. But you know what? It needed some fresh blood. It needed these characters to band together and not to be cast all over the United States. It needed Orlando Jones. It needed Pablo Schreiber. It needed Matt Sweeney. It needed Mr. Nancy. It is sad that it didn't get it. It really is, and I'm still distraught about it. I'm still pissed that this show got canceled, because if there was ever a show that I can honestly say had all the potential in the world, this show to me was up there with Game of Thrones potential wise, and it just couldn't find its footing for whatever reason. It couldn't find its footing. Some of it was out of its. Some of it was the showrunner's fault. Little of it was the actual show's fault. Most of it was behind the scenes drama that caused this show to fail. But let me know what y'all think, guys. Let me know if y'all think season 3 was as bad as what naysayers say it was. After watching it again, I say without a doubt, unfortunately, they're right. They're right. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Y'all take care.